Margaret. I am going to be your broadcast engineer for today. I am here with the wonderful Mr. Calvin, who is here basically to discuss the execute DAPI script step, which will be actually really cool. That'll be fun. It had some recent changes. How recent again, Calvin? Was it 19.4 they changed it, or was it after that, or before that? Excuse me. There's no after.
This is a new feature for 19.
But before we get into that, we should get into our training schedule of wonder and joy. So, our training schedule, we have solve complexity, basically logic classes with Nick Hunter. That's what this is. It's logic classes with Nick Hunter, as he goes through a lot of his tips and tricks and how he reasons his way around things that FileMaker won't do naturally, which is actually really cool. Friday is Execute SQL for Advanced FileMaker Developers with Kyle Williams. We are back with Advanced Execute SQL. So we do have a beginning stream. I don't think it's finished yet, but hopefully we'll get it done before then so you can go back and watch it before you attend this if you missed it. Monday is our last day of logic lessons with Nick Hunter. And Tuesday is Wolfpack update. So Christian Olsen has Wolfpack updates, so he's going to be talking about that over the next week as well. That'll be really cool. If you're like, boy, I really wish I could pass the FileMaker certification, do I have the thing for you? Special High Intensity Training FileMaker Certification. Don't overthink that acronym too much. We have January 10th, January 11th, January 12th, January 13th, and 14th. Basically, we break down the certification test and what you should be studying for it. And Richard is determined to get as many people to pass it as possible, so that's like his major goal. If I go here to click here for more information, you can buy it straight, or it could be part of the complete bundle. So you have two options, one of which will get you the complete bundle of wonder, where we have 100+ hours of video content on top of the live high-intensity training with the FileMaker certification. Or if you're like, I don't need that extra training, just feel free to buy it straight. We have both options available. I highly recommend it. Being certified is always kind of a hump to pass for a lot of engineers. Like, it's one thing to be a paid FileMaker developer, and then to get certified is a little extra step on top of that. So that's fun. Real quick about the bundle, since we were just talking about it, we have our wonderful bundle for beginner, intermediate, and advanced FileMaker developers. It is 100+ hours. Every time I look at this thing, it gets bigger. We really cover pretty much I say we, it's not me. Richard talks about pretty much everything in a very dynamic, high, energetic way, so I promise you will not be bored anytime soon. And we discuss pretty much the entire FileMaker platform. So if you've got a question about the platform and you're like, well, these live streams aren't doing it for me, we have a massive bundle for you. Please feel free to use that. Oh, real quick, we do stream on 3 platforms. We stream on YouTube, we stream on Discord, and we stream on Twitch. Please ask questions. We live off of questions. We eat, breathe, and talk questions. Like, the entire point of this thing is to make a better FileMaker community, as well as offering training to people who need to induct people into the FileMaker community so we can have more FileMaker developers. What are we doing today, Calvin?
Today we're talking about the Execute FileMaker Data API script step, which is a new script step for FileMaker 19. And it was introduced to the FileMaker Data API is something that's used often for integrating FileMaker with something like a website, or calling FileMaker from outside of FileMaker, but it wasn't available to us in FileMaker Pro. So in 19, we got this new script step that gave us the ability to call the FileMaker Data API from within FileMaker Pro and get a result, just the same result that we would expect using the data API in the standard way. So this was something that was requested by developers, especially with the add-ons that were using a lot of JavaScript, and they wanted to be able to call that from within FileMaker. And so Claris gave us this new script step to meet that need. So we're going to look at this, and I packaged this demo as the demo that we're going to look at helps you put together a request, and then it is packaged as an add-on, so you can add it to your file and start doing search requests on your own data. So let's dive in.
Cool.
So just to start off, let's look at the let's look at this script step, because it's pretty, as far as the options go on this, it's just called execute FileMaker Data API. And there's just two options here. The target, which you can have this, you can save the result in a field or in a variable. In my demo, I'm setting it as a global variable. And a request. So the request here, when you're typing this in, you're only given a single calculation area to specify the request, but there's a lot of details that you can put in there. Let's go ahead and jump over to the FileMaker Pro help, and we'll look at execute FileMaker Data API. So here is all of the options that, and some of these are required. The actions required, the layout and tables required depending on what kind of action we're doing, and these all have to be packaged into a JSON object, a simple object, but still it has to be packaged into that object to get the to get that formatted right. And so this demo is going to help you format that. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. So as you look, the request title is just a way for tracking different requests in here. So you can have multiple requests. We can call this one demo 2. The action, there's only two options for action, and that is to read data or to pull the metadata. So let's go ahead and see what read looks like. And I'm just going to execute this here. Now I got an error message. This is what the request looks like. And this is what the result is. And I've got an error. The code is 1708, layout name required. So here I need to specify a layout name. So I'm going to select this, the current layout we're on. Let's try execute again. Here now it's successful, and we can see that this was the request. Let me just make this a little wider. So we just said action read and layout, the current layout. And as you scroll through here, you can see the result, and it's actually going to give part of the field values is going to be these JSON objects, so it looks a little ugly. And so here we're defining what we're doing and what layout it's based on. Let's go ahead and change to metadata and see what that does. And here, now we get the metadata. This is a list of the field metadata, and you can scroll through there and see the different items there. The value list that's on the field, we'll see. There's we should be able to find the field name in here. Anyway, it's a list of all of that information from this table and layout. And we can keep specifying there. We can query a field for a specific value. Now, since we don't have a lot of data in this sample file, then we won't do that. Let me go ahead and clear this data out. It's not very interesting looking at this in here. So what I'm going to do is save this as an add-on. So I've got this add-on option, install add-on. I'm going to install it. And now this has been installed. I'm going to open up a copy of FM Starting Point that happens to have a bunch of data in it. And let's go ahead into layout mode and add a new add-on. I'm going to type in Data API, and there is my add-on. I didn't use the wolf pack, so it doesn't look fancy, but it's there. Let's go ahead and open up Contexts. And I'm going to drag and drop a button on here that says New FileMaker Data API Request. And let's go ahead and open this. So what the add-on did for us is it added this added the structure for building these requests into the file that I want to be querying on. And when I say new request, it pops open the window, creates a new request with the action of read, and specifies the layout as the current layout that we're on. So I'm going to call this one demo 2. And let's just see what happens when I select execute FileMaker Data API. So just did a request, and we'll notice that there are 599 records in here. And we can see all of this data here all of the field data, all the information from that layout. Now, usually when you run a data API request, you'll have specific special fields for, or layouts for performing that request, so you don't overload, you don't get too much information. But you can scroll through here and see all these all the data here. We've got portals and portal information and such. Let's go ahead and change it to something else. Let's go to a list. Now you'll notice in this demo, it automatically populates a value list with all of the fields. So I'm going to, or layouts. I'm going to type in 300, and I'm going to look for the contact list view. Let's try that. That'll give us a little more refined. We won't get list. We won't get as much of that portal data, but we can see how many items are in here. Now, if we look at this, we can, maybe we don't want this much data. We can put some limits on it. So there's a limit. You can specify only want 12 records. I'll say execute. And you'll notice this list is a lot shorter. Let's just change it to 2. And again, we're seeing the request up here. This is what we're passing to the FileMaker Data API, and this is the result we're getting back from it, based on the data in this particular copy of the FM starting point. And as we go down, there's some other things we can specify here as well. If you know, for example, the record ID, let's go ahead and here's a record ID. I'll copy this and put it in the record ID and select request. Now we only get one result based on that specific record ID. And if you're specifying the record ID, obviously there's only going to be no more than one result. So you don't necessarily have to put a limit on there. And you can also specify a query and do a search. Now, for each of these items that are not required, there is a default value set. And so there's a for example, in the version, you can specify a version as 1, 2, or vLatest. By default, it will be vLatest. And if we go back over here, actually, I want to go look at Safari again. In the limit by default is 100 records. So if I did a search here, and let's remove the record ID, well, this list here is only going to be 100 records long, even though there are many more records in my table. I believe there was 500 or 600. So if I change that limit, we should see a more data, a longer list here. And as we so this tool is to help you kind of explore the data API within your app and help you put together those requests or compose the request that is then passed to the FileMaker Data API. Do we have any questions?
We do, actually. We've got a couple. We've got 3. So let me go back up top. David Angel wants to know if you have to create a special layout.
Well, so you don't have to create a special layout, but usually it's recommended, because then you can define specifically what data is available to the data API, and so it's not overwhelmed. For example, in this case, I'm just specifying, you can specify any layout, and that's what this value list is for. It will just put together a list of all of your layouts in your current file. But if you specify, if you use one of these layouts, you probably get more information than you want, one of your default layouts. For example, I've got this preferences logo field that I don't think there's any instance where you would really want that in your result. and you'll see that keeps coming up for each record. And so that's not really helpful. And then, so it's not required to have a specific layout, but it usually makes things more helpful with the data API if you have specific layouts that are referencing that. And it also, if the more lightweight that layout can be, the faster your API requests will be.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answers your question,
Yeah.
David. Let me know if that doesn't. Ruben, question: how do you handle container data?
Yeah, so the results of this is all in text. So you'll see right here, the container data is we're just getting the file name. So the fmgumby2.png, that's the container that we're seeing. We're looking at the list layout. So that's this container field right here. So the container is just going to give you the file name.
Okay, and then Peter Geens, can you request container data as base 64?
I know you can use. I haven't used this, the execute FileMaker Data API script step to reference container data, just because it's if you're in FileMaker Pro, there's easier ways of referencing container data. But I know you can interact with the container data in the FileMaker Data API on the web side, and so I imagine there could be some application for that.
Okay, good.
But I don't really have an answer there.
Got it. Okay, cool. Peter is typing, Ruben's typing, David is also typing. I assume we get follow-ups to those. Peter says, okay, thank you. And I think I'm going to let you continue then, Mr. Calvin.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions there, I'm just going to show how to define a query. Now, I've tried to make this as easy as possible. There's only 2 action options, so that's the metadata and the read. There's only 3 version options at this time. Layouts depends on what app you're in. So as soon as you log in or add to your app, it will generate this value list, which is a list of all of the layouts in the app. Same with tables. This is just a list of table occurrences. But the query is a little more difficult to put together. So the query in this case, it actually needs to be an array. And I have a predefined, this is already set up for me over here. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it in, and we'll see what happens. But this is, you can kind of see where we have this, we've got this, there's only one line in this array, but we have date created and a date specified. So let's go ahead and see if this brings up any record data. So I'll go ahead and query that, and this is our result. Let's go ahead and find the creation in the, make sure we're in the right field. So F, create, and maybe this field is not in the layout. Let's try a different field. Let's go ahead and say account name. We'll change the field that we're specifying. You'll see it's the key value pair is the field name and then the value we're looking for. And let's go ahead and just grab a value from one of these, maybe something else. We'll grab this one. Let's see if we can bring this as a result. Let's go back over to our query and paste that in. We'll paste it and say execute. And so here's our result, which was that record we were just viewing. And it looks like there might be a couple in there. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records were found. And so we can also limit that. So maybe say we only want 2. Now we only have 2 records that were found. And you'll see the query we're giving it the account name and then what value we want for that field. So field name first, and then the name. And you can actually put modifiers, or what do we call them? You can put those search operators in there as well. Those will work in your find for the data API. It's like a regular FileMaker find, and so on with those other options. Any other questions about those items?
No, I don't think so. Any questions, everyone? There was kind of a brief discussion about using JSON formulas with this, but I don't know how relevant that is to what you're doing right now.
We can take a look at how we're composing this request in the composing that request, if we want to take a look at that. So to show you how we're composing that request, we are using all default JSON set JSON object options. And this is a little, can I zoom out? So, and even here you'll see that we could even zoom out a little farther for these. I put in explanations for each of these lines to kind of help us see what's going on. But let me go ahead and just clean this up just a little bit. But you can see here is our we're using a let statement, and here are all of our options first, and the options correspond with with each of the options that we can have in that JSON object. And then after we set up all of our options, and these are just referencing the layout, the fields in the table that we have on our layout for composing that request. And then I am generating the request, only setting the element if it's not empty. Now the action's required, so we assume that it's not empty. But for all of the rest of these, we're only setting the object if it is not empty. And then this was just an earlier test. And then we're formatting the elements so that it's a little easier to read in our demo. And then finally we have the request. And you'll notice these items are just based on the fields. Now if we go over to, let's go ahead and say okay. And we'll go back to our layout over here. Each of these fields just corresponds with one of those options. And when you add this to your app, you're going to see those layouts in your dropdown. It will dynamically update to your list of layouts, and same with the table occurrences as well. Any questions about that?
Kind of the very big picture paragraph of a question, which I'm going to read, but I also recommend that you look at it yourself because it's long. From Stu. Actually, no, we're going to do one from Ruben first. Sorry, Ruben. Question. How does this compare to other methods of FileMaker databases communicating with each other?
Other FileMaker databases communicating with each other?
Other methods, yeah.
Yeah, so the use case of this is not two different apps talking to each other. The use case is calling it within your app. So if we can call back to remember back to the beginning of our conversation, this was added because developers were building those add-ons using JavaScript and the web viewer. When FileMaker 19 came out and we were working on those initial add-ons, then it was they wanted a way to call the FileMaker Data API and have the results in a JSON object that they could easily interact with in JavaScript and have that data readily available. Now, when so it's more of a way of searching for data that you want to pull within your app, not one app calling another app. Though I suppose that would be possible. Does that answer the question?
Let me know, Ruben, if that answers your question. Okay, he said yes. A question from Stu, which is the big paragraph.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar one, but what is the application for using the DAPI script step? I see value in DAPI between other apps and FM, but when would you use DAPI to connect FM to FM rather than adding an external data source? The only thing I can think of is when two different organizations are using FM and need to connect with limited permissions. Is there another application for using the DAPI script step?
Yeah, and it's a similar question to the last one, but not quite the same. But this is actually, so when the FileMaker Data API was added to the platform, that was the use case. It was a website calling FileMaker. It was some other service calling FileMaker. And there was no reason that we would want to execute the FileMaker Data API from within FileMaker Pro. And there wasn't a use case for that. Suddenly we started importing all of these JavaScript in FileMaker 19. We started importing all of these JavaScript libraries into our apps, and we wanted a way that we could pull data from our apps and immediately have them in a JSON object that we could manipulate with those libraries, with those JSON libraries. And so that was the use case. That's the application, not really talking between multiple apps. And you're right, if you have two FileMaker apps talking to each other, having it set up as an external data source is going to make a lot more sense than calling it with the data API script step. And also, when you're calling it within FileMaker, the data API doesn't require any authentication, because it knows you're already in FileMaker. Whatever credentials you have, it will recognize what privilege set you have and limit you by that privilege set. You don't have to have if you call the FileMaker Data API from outside, you have to go through an authentication process as well. Any other questions?
I don't think so. I think.
And Kyle Williams has a good point on Discord there. He says it is a method similar to execute SQL, and that was really we started using execute SQL, which is a calculation function to perform these queries on our data, and it would give us the data in a list that we could manipulate. And if you think about it in the same scenario, then it kind of gives you an insight in how you might use something like the execute FileMaker Data API script step. We have a calendar add-on that uses execute SQL to generate a list of FileMaker, or a list of events for the calendar. But we could have that replace that execute SQL step or process with a execute FileMaker Data API, and FileMaker would put that into the execute FileMaker Data API script step would put that into a JSON object that we could then manipulate within the JavaScript. And that might be, for somebody who's familiar with using JavaScript, that might be an easier way to process the data. And if we were to revisit that, we might try it that way. Any other questions, comments?
There's kind of another comment from Ruben. I think speed might also make a difference between different methods.
Mm-hmm.
And then Y. O'Keefe, again, I'm mispronouncing that. Perhaps to get records in JSON format automatically.
Exactly. Yeah. So with execute SQL, you can define a separator between the values and the records, between the field values and the records, and usually we'll separate them by a comma and separate the records by return. And in some cases, we'll then take that result and manipulate it and get it into a JSON array, and this would give you that array automatically. Yeah, and what really the goal was, we had another demo file, and we initially were going to go with using that, and just kind of shows you that it works. But what we really wanted to see happen with this one is give you the ability to add this as an add-on into whatever apps you're working on, or the data sets that you're familiar with, and then when it's in that environment, you can perform finds on your data, or perform these execute SQL commands and see what your data would look like, and see if there's applications that you can put that to use, and such.
A week or two ago, we discussed the MBS low webhook limitation due to the potential for simultaneous script calls. Can you discuss simultaneous DAPI script calls?
So this is being performed in FileMaker Pro. So I'm not sure you're only going to have it called once, because it's a single. We only have one script running at a time. Or do you mean called by different people? I don't think we're going to run into an issue where there's multiple calls. It's not like they're. I don't believe we are running this on the server. I believe this is through FileMaker Pro. That's kind of an under the hood question of where this is actually being performed, which is a really interesting question.
That FMS is also possible. So
I guess you could, if you were calling this, there could be a limitation calling this with perform script on server if you had too many calls. I'm not sure what the limitation would be, though. I know if you have too many calls on perform script on server, you will get I think it's an error 3. It's not available.
Okay, so yeah, I hope that kind of helps, Oregon Dean. If not, please ask a follow-up question so we can break it down and ponder it together. And YO Cafe, so this is much faster than execute SQL, question mark?
I am not sure about that. No, I do not know the answer to that one. But I do not know. I could speculate, but I'm not going to.
You don't want to accidentally say the wrong thing. Yeah, valid. And then, of course, kind of a similar related one. If you have a relationship in place, will it be faster than execute SQL? Which, again, kind of the same question. Not same, per se, but...
If you have a relationship in place, you'll see that it does recognize the relationships, and you can actually put limits on the port, on like how many results you get from a portal or from a relation in those requests. Obviously, if you can't pulling data through a relationship, that's going to run a little slower than pulling the data directly. But I haven't messed around too much with the performance aspects of the execute SQL. I'm sorry, with the execute FileMaker Data API. Execute SQL definitely has its limitations.
Okay, cool. And then Kyle Williams sort of agreed with our earlier comment. The only time I see it in issue multiple calls is if you're performing it using PSauce. So.
Yeah.
So basically, if you overstack your poor server, it's probably going to have a tantrum. Kyle Williams sort of mentions execute SQL extract with a blank slate, so relationships are slow to build. SQL be faster in most cases. It does not return all of the metadata and additional data. SQL responses only provide you what you need. DAPI gives you a ton of extra data that you probably won't need.
That's a fair point. You can limit though what data you pull by, and that's why you would have a dedicated layout for DAPI. You would want to point it to a layout with only the fields that you wanted to pull, and that way you're limiting so you don't pull everything and anything and everything. And then pulling things, I guess if you're defining the relationship with execute SQL, joins can really slow things down. For the most part, I don't use joins in execute SQL because it just becomes much too slow. So one thing that I got right here, I just thought maybe we could look at an error. So I just did a search on. All I did was change the layout name to a different layout and point it to products, and I got this error saying duplicate key, and then there's a table occurrence, which is a little strange. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And I'm going to go over the products, and I believe this is the same layout that I'm pointing to. I'll go into layout mode, and I've got a bunch of extra stuff here on the left, and this kind of goes back to the idea of having a dedicated layout. And I just deleted all of that extra stuff. So we had a bunch of extra stuff here on the left for different options in FileMaker in FM Starting Point. And so I just removed those, and let's go ahead and try it again. And so this time it does work because I removed those extra stuff off on the right. And one of the issues that this again illustrates is that it's really best practice to have, if you're going to use execute FileMaker Data API, you have dedicated layouts to point to. But I thought it would be helpful to look at a problem error. And anything else?
Do you have an example with DAPI/JS interaction with a web viewer? I'm limited in my experience with JS with web viewers, so that would help.
Oh, okay. Well, so in FM Starting Point, so just to kind of illustrate what I was trying to explain as far as getting the results. So in this calendar that we have in FM Starting Point is a JavaScript library. And here over in the background data, we've got this events area. And this is an array of records in a JSON array, and each of these objects is a record, an event that we want to display on the calendar. And so in the case of this, we are referencing we're doing a execute SQL because this was built in FileMaker, originally built in FileMaker 15, I believe. And so we didn't have the execute FileMaker Data API available to us in FileMaker Pro. So we were using execute SQL and then taking that data and updating it into a JSON array so that with the full calendar library, which you see all the JavaScript libraries here, it can take that data and process it. And so what we could do now is replace that execute SQL with an execute FileMaker Data API, which could give us this array as a JSON array, and give the calendar something that it could more quickly read. But obviously that would have to be formatted specifically for this calendar to read. So we'd have to take the data from the JSON result from FileMaker's the FileMaker result, and then reformat it for this specific library to read. And that would be true with any JSON library. Each JSON library would want that data in a specific format. And so if you've got experience with JSON and JavaScript, then you could use that to reformat that data. And if you go into layout mode and select the add-ons, and there's some default JavaScript add-ons. These, I believe a number of these will use the execute FileMaker Data API just in the way that they're set up. They're implementing that script step.
So thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you so much for Calvin for doing this. This has been awesome. I greatly appreciate it. We all greatly appreciate it. Your file is really cool, and hopefully the internet stops exploding so people can actually download it. I will send it out again tomorrow, you guys, and make sure that y'all can get it. It will happen eventually, I promise. So you all have a lovely, lovely day, and thank you again, Mr. Calvin.
Not a problem.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!